Hi, this is Jeff Lesher with What's the Point? And we're going to continue our series of stupid leader tricks, or better said, those things that leaders are encouraged to do by way of generic counsel and often by old saw or adage, trite counsel encapsulated in statements, many times which are not very accurate. And I've got two for you this week that really not only work individually to defeat good leadership, but work in tandem to make the quest to be an effective leader even harder. And they are these. Number one, if you want something done well, do it yourself. And number two, the working manager. So let's start with number two first, the working manager. This ridiculous label suggesting that some managers do not in fact work has been around for decades, at least since the 80s, when flattening organizations began to become popular. And through that effort, by the way, and there's a lot of research to back this up, organizations have become far less effective because they've literally stripped out the very linchpins within their organization that make it work. Now, does that mean that we should have redundancy and inefficiency and bureaucracy in our organizations? Of course not. But we should look to the real value that people are creating, which often doesn't show up on the scorecard that we keep, where we're only looking at outputs and especially lagging indicators of outputs and very little at the inputs or the leading indicators. Working managers, all managers work. What kind of work are they doing? Now, here's where it begins to get very interesting and ties into number one, which is if you want something done well, do it yourself. So let's say that's true. Let's say that's true. You're the best person because you're the working manager. You're the best person to do this job. And unless you develop other people to be able to do the job at least as well as you do, then you're always going to be in a position of having to do it, sometimes described as being in the weeds, often in reality, described or otherwise, meaning that you are not taking the time to do the things that you should be, which include creating capacity among your team, thinking and acting strategically, representing the organization externally, building networks both inside and outside the organization that you use and that you can introduce other people into, and the list goes on. Those are really high value contributions, ways in which you can in fact remain valued and valuable to the organization over time. Again, decades of research back me up on this. The problem is you think that your currency is whatever you know right now. The thing, by the way, most likely to expire, most likely to have a shelf life. And by not, this is counterintuitive, but by not sharing that knowledge with others, by not developing other go-to resources, and maybe even people who can do whatever it is that you're doing better or come up with a better way to do it because they've got a fresh perspective on this. Parenthetically, I just read this article. It was out a couple of weeks ago, but I got to read it yesterday about planning for one's retirement and how people are transitioning from very senior roles in some cases to, if you will, less senior roles and having to get out of their own way in order to do that, set their ego aside, stop being a CEO, which is what one of the people interviewed for this piece said. But in fact, this person also acknowledged that for a long time, he was literally standing in the way of progress. He needed to get out of the way whether he was going to retire or not. We can adopt this mindset that we know best and we know only. And we're not only hurting others and the organization that we're sworn to serve, but we're really hurting ourselves because we can't do anything else, nor can we do what we really should be doing to create value. If this is true, that you are a working manager and you think that you're the only person who can do the job well, you're not actually doing your work as well as you could. Make the time, starting with making the commitment to help others evolve into being at least as good, in the critical functions of the role that you're wrongly filling as an individual contributor, thinking that you are a working manager by doing individual contributor work versus being part of that work at a different level in a different way, creating capacity. Here's the analogy that I often provide to people. When I went to college, people, and this is sadly true, people literally gathered around me at the laundromat to watch me fold my laundry. Now, was this because I was the best laundry folder of all time? No, it wasn't. I just happened to grow up in a house where my mom had 5 kids and no help in raising us, and often had other people in the house as well. So from a very early age, we were taught how to do our laundry. And the process was pretty straightforward. Number one, setting the expectation. You're going to do your laundry. Number two, I'm going to show you how to do it. Number three, I'm going to watch you do it and be there to provide support. And then number four, I'm going to expect that you do it. And I'm not going to be the arbiter of exactly how you do it, as long as you do it on some sort of schedule and don't ruin your clothes, at least in mass, in the process. That is as good of a way of any as understanding what you need to be doing. Stop being a working manager, which is a self-deluding, get in the way, fail to create the capacity that you're responsible for doing manager, and get over yourself. Because again, if it's true in the moment that you're the only person who can do the job as well as it can be done, then you're not actually doing your job very well. That is the point this week. And I'm pointing at you. And I expect that you'll take a look at yourself and point you and point those who depend on you in a better direction, because there is one.